everybody. Welcome to an episode of Melbourne Musos Facebook Live, where tonight, the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a little bit of the 20 beats in 20 minutes, 20 rudiments in 20 minutes. Now I'm going to do 120 years in 20 minutes. That was a New Orleans second line rhythm. There it is there. It's like a calypso or a 3-2 clave with a 2 feel. Bang. I'm straight off. This is a ragtime to feel and trad jazz. 4 feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, 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 boom. Da 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 da. Now, we're into the world of jazz, okay? I'm getting stuck straight into it. I've got 120 years to do. Okay. So what it is, I started with the New Orleans. And lots of little rim shots. And then I went into the 2 feel, which is with your feet. Boom, 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 boom. And then the 4 feel, boom, and when you're dealing with trad jazz, you're talking about the from ragtime, Scott Joplin, The Entertainer, the old piano favourite there. And what you've also got is going from ragtime, 1900s, 1910s. 1917 is a year that seems to loom large with a chap by the name of Jelly Roll Morton and one Louis Armstrong, and you've got all this wonderful stuff, and it started to turn into what we know as traditional jazz, trad jazz. And then when you go through the golden era of music, which is jazz music, it's almost like you take things away each time. So here I am doing the, like 2 feel, 4 feel. Then you take away the snare drum to a certain degree in big band jazz. And then in the years of the late 20s into the 30s and 40s, people like Gene Krupa and then Buddy Rich seemed to loom large. I could have said Baby Dodds in the traditional jazz era with the most wonderful press rolls. But when you're talking about Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, you've got your, you might start off with your 2 feel. One other thing that they did in the 30s was a thing called jungle drums. Gene Krupa was big with Sing, Sing, Sing. There you go, but then you're back right through the 30s into the 40s and the war years. I'm going quick. I've got to try and do 120 years. Hope you're enjoying it so far. There you go. And what happened then was during the war years, post-World War II, it's almost economic in the sense that big band jazz was the music, okay? Neil Peart of Rush used to say it was the pinnacle because it was the one time where you had to have incredibly superior musicianship at the same time that music that needed superior musicianship was the best music of the day, if you know what I mean. There you go. And you had so many great big bands like Glenn Miller, the Dorsey Brothers, Artie Shaw I really liked. Dad had his Reader's Digest, the big band era. I was the only guy who played it. I'll get to it one day, son. He never did. I've got it in the other room. Next to his cocktail favourites. And then moving right along, what happened then was into the post-war years, 1945 through to the 50s, you started to take away things from the jazz rhythm. The bass drum was always there to pump along a big band, you know. Snare drum was used for accents. Then what would happen is that in the early 1950s, 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock, back to jazz, but rock and roll over the top. Bo Diddley was also there. He always called himself the originator of rock and roll, and he loved his 3/2 clave. Buy my girl a diamond ring, he was on the other week. I'm repeating myself. 3/2 clave. And that's your early 50s. And then what happened is even Elvis, you got all your, you know, like, don't be cruel. It's basically a jazz rhythm, but you sing rock and roll over the top. But in the middle, you keep it knocking, but you can't come in. It flattened out. You went from to and Johnny B. Good, Chuck Berry, all these people, and Earl Palmer was quite famous for two-handed rock, but straight and flat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That was a little slip. What's going on there, Chris? Then, come on, everybody. Twist. Double, single, double, single. Double, then a single. Or it could be a single, then a double. And we know that best, like Mizzaloo. And then what you had then with that is surf rock started to happen with all this business. You see, so you'd have boom, the Ventures, Shadows, Dick Dale, and then with surf, whoa, your rolls. And our very own Atlantics, and I do remember the quote with the drummer of the Atlantics, with Bombora, that he said his secret weapon was paradiddles to keep those the tom things happening. So he'd be there going. Not up cha-cha-cha yet. But there's the twist and the surf and all this. At the same time, the Beatles were starting to come up in Hamburg, all the history of the Beatles. And they started out, they loved Little Richard, so we were already doing a... Oi! And all that. And then they were coming up through that. And at the same time, there was a little bit of a thing sideways from Antonio Carlos Jobim, where he took the 3-2 clave, which was... Now it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But he took that last note and syncopated it, mate. Stinkopated it. And it made it more flowing. And then he had tall and tan and long, and I did it the other way, and all that. And then what you had was, we're into the 60s rock and roll. And then what started to happen is the Beatles hit at the same time. It was this wonderful melting pot of different styles starting to come up. You still had your twists with Chubby Checker. Bo Diddley was still going on with his Bo Diddley beat. He played it so often that he called it by, so a lot of guitarists out there, oh, do you know that Bo Diddley thing? Sort of stuff. And there you go. And then at the same time, the Beatles came up, Rolling Stones. So if you're talking about Ringo and Charlie Watts, you're starting to talk about the good old... There you go. And you'd have... One of the things about the Beatles was that they had the Liverpool Jangle, is what a lot of people called it in the day, where you'd have straight eighths coming from John or George, or for that matter, Paul. But you'd see Ringo doing a little tight shuffle, like... with a big smile. There you go. While everyone else is going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so it's almost like a form of a 3-2 polyrhythm. That's the little secret with the Beatles, the Liverpool Jangle. Get onto it. So when you're doing, say, I want to hold your hand, help, I need a body, all the hits and stuff, look out for the Liverpool Jangle, okay, sort of thing, to give it that little authentic touch. Feel like I'm doing an ad for the Dolmio Grin there. Anyway, there you go. And then with Charlie Watts, he was a jazz drummer playing rock and roll, so he had an innate swing. It was wonderful. There you go. So there you go there. Now, when I'm talking about Ringo and Charlie Watts in the mid-'60s, you can't get away from people like Mitch Mitchell with Hendrix and Keith Moon of The Who. People try to put us down. No hi-hat. First guy in England with double bass drums, I think. I think it was Ginger Baker. They came out of the same Louis Bellson concert. And it was Ginger Baker of the Cream and then Keith Moon both talked to each other and said, I want a double bass drum just like Louis Bellson. And one of them, Keith Moon wanted a special type, so it took a little bit longer. And Ginger got it straight off the rack. And one of the things about that is that when you're hearing things like that in the early days of double bass drumming, you would hear walking. It'd be like a... Then he'd pick up his snare drum and throw it at Pete and all that. And, I don't want to do that. Doris, I love you dearly. I'm not going to throw you anywhere. There you go. And that's, there you go with Keith Moon, Mitch Mitchell, who was also crazy. Jimi Hendrix loved him. And then I've talked about Ginger Baker as well in there. And then we're towards the end of the 60s, and then you have the people who came from that. Now, they were already there, but you started to talk. I'm talking about the two. I've always sort of talked about having pairs, and now I'm talking about John Bonham and Ian Paice. John Bonham of Led Zeppelin and Ian Paice of Deep Purple, level times. And then you started to get that. And then all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's a little bit obscure, but you can. There's a funny clip of Ian Paice where he was a single. They were both single bass drummers, right? But there was a track, the title track, Fireball, and there's black and white footage of the roadies bringing in the second bass drum just for that track. Then oh, Ian Paice, oh my lord. Everyone talks about John Bonham, but lick of the century. If you couldn't do that, you were nothing. Okay, right, left foot, hi-hat if you can. There's a clip out there with a kid playing John Bonham's actual green, beautiful Ludwig kit. And he started to do it, and I nearly threw him a beer at the TV because he didn't put the hi-hat in with the jingle jangle. Moving right along. There you go. So there's the 70s, and I'm probably leaving out your favourite drummer and all that, but this is, I'm on time sort of. And I'll add people left, right and centre as I go along when I'm doing the old editing. And that's what goes on there. Hey! So what we're into is the 70s, and we start to do a little bit of prog rock. I love Barrymore Barlow of Tull. Everybody knows that by now. And he was the guy I really knuckled down and said, he's playing the melody. Right? He's playing the melody. And then you start to hear people like Neil Peart from Rush coming up. You've got Bill Bruford in there with both Yes and then King Crimson. And mamma mia, what a time for drummers. Oh. Ooh. So you might have... thought I'd get in my Frank Zappa. Terry Bozzio, you know, all that business. Oh, there's a whole... Every drummer for Frank Zappa was just fantastic from, I mean, you know, right from the get-go, Jimmy Carl Black and people like that. And then you get into Ainsley Dunbar, and then Chester Thompson, Ralph Humphrey. And then the people we sort of know became really popular, Terry Bozzio, Vinnie Colaiuta, people like that. You know, you kept on going with it. So there you go. Ooh! Chad Wackerman at the end, you know. And there's a David Logerman in there that doesn't get much of a mention in the middle. He was a groovy little drummer. He wasn't with Frank very long, but he did You Are What You Is and the live concert in Paris 1980. And it was groovy. He's a good drummer. There you go. Just never mentioned. Anyways, into the 70s, we start to get into the 80s. So, God Save the Queen and the fascist regime. And then rock high school, rock high school. One of the things I liked best about the Ramones was when they were doing a tour in the late 70s, and it was one of the controversial ones with the Sex Pistols. And someone asked, I think it was Joey Ramone, it was one of the Ramones anyway, but whatever. And he said, how's the tour going? I said, oh, it's going great. How's the band playing? Well, we've got an hour set. We're going great. Yeah, we've got it down to 45 minutes now. Not because they cut songs. They did their set list, it's an hour, and they progressively got rock and a hard school, rock and a hard school, oh, see ya. And then the police turned up and arrested the Sex Pistols and the rest of them. So their set gradually just got faster and faster. And it was just the most wonderful thing. Yeah, the band's playing great. We've got our hour set down to 45 minutes now. Loved it. There you go. And there's your punk. New wave, budgie. Lots of toms. And every time I mention Budgie of Susie and the Banshees, I also talk about our very own Rob First. Older than car the Osco, I went down to Alice Springs. Boom, bam, boom, bam, boom, bam, boom, bam, boom. I might do a little bit of that later tonight. Anyway, there you go. But then at some point with New Wave, you got into everything's 4/4. Down. Even though that's 70s daka. There you go. Oh, there we go. And when we're talking of punk and into the 80s and all of that, it started to become quite the melting pot. And you started to get... reggae. Reggae backwards. It's rock backwards is reggae. So... There you go, all that stuff. And then at the same time in the 80s, all your Van Halens and all this business. One of the things about metal, when you're talking about, Metallica coming up and, of course I'm talking about, when talking about Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, you're also talking about Black Sabbath as well and the birth of metal. But when we're talking about the 80s and Metallica coming up, it goes back to that 3 speeds that I talk about a lot. So what you've got maybe is you could have halftime. Normal. Cut. What am I, Grandpa Blast? Anyway, there you go. Master of Puppets. I talked about the other day. Disposable Heroes. Manchester in the Rain. Listen to that. Wow. Bang. And there you go. Punk, reggae, metal, 80s, 4 on the Floor. You're starting to get into 90s grunge. And in those days... getting into that biz, you're still doing your rock beats, your Dave Grohl, then into his Foo Fighters, Soundgarden with Mr. Cameron on there, Spoon Man in 7, and all this business. Wonderful stuff, bringing everything into the grunge era and stuff. But then in the mid to late 90s, you had people like David Bowie with an Earthling album and talk about Zach Alford and all that. And you're starting to get into that little thing that's called drum and bass. And it's just busy. It's just busy. And it's very paradiddly busy. And that goes back to a little bit of the old jazz and jazz rock. I'm talking about 120 years of popular music. Even just last week, I talked about Billy Cobham and Steve Gadd. You're probably throwing something at the or throwing your phone across the room going, he's bloody forgotten about Cobham and Gadd. No, I did it last week. But I'm talking about just general musical styles. I'm actually doing more the styles than I am the drum beats, if you know what I'm getting at. Anyway, that's my defence. Anyway, so what you've got is then... Well, dance to that. Ooh. And then punk makes a bit of a return with Green Day. And Blink-182, Offspring, Pretty Fly, For a White Guy, all this business. There you go. And then bubbling under all of that for a decade already, and already very famous, you had the Rappers. And it's going to now. Nate Smith and people like that who are YouTube, fantastic on YouTube and things like that. But that rule, just your solid halftime beat, all that sort of stuff. If we talk about the Swifties and stuff, last March you had Taylor Swift come into town, and it seemed like even Paul Kelly and a band called Pendulum up in Sydney seemed to zero in on Taylor Swift's track Anti-Hero, which is exactly that. There. So there you go. Boy, I think I did it. 6:28, I've done it. Thank you very much, umpire. So what I did, I started with... Da 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 da. Hey, Boteleo. Ready, Steve? My name's Chris Quinlan. I'll have this up probably tomorrow. With a lot of insets. I'm going to spend tomorrow sourcing a lot of fantastic drummers, some from my own collection here, and some from the internerds, and I hope I gave it a little bit of justice in trying to get 120 years of music into 20 minutes. Come on. for a nice glass of